started so we can maximize our time with Katie today. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Tiffany, and I'm the Executive Director for the Sonoma State University Alumni Association. Thank you for joining us for today's program, Build Your Brand, Better Your Network, presented by the Sonoma State University Alumni Association and the Sonoma State Career Center. Nowadays, your personal brand in the job search means everything. It's more than just your reputation. It's your online presence, professional relationships, and previous work. Over the next hour, we'll walk you through the steps in branding yourself for the professional world and beyond. Today's presentation is being recorded, and the recording, as well as a post-event survey, will be emailed to you and available following today's program. As you think of questions related to our presentation, please go ahead and put them for us in the Q&A feature here on Zoom. We'll have about 15 minutes at the end of the presentation to answer questions that come through. And also thank you to those who have already submitted questions. So we'll have those later to address. Before I introduce today's speaker, I'd like to introduce Kelsey Bensky, who will be moderating our Q&A at the end of the presentation. Kelsey is a career advisor at the Sonoma State Career Center. She joined the team at Sonoma State 3 years ago and works with our current students and alumni. Kelsey enjoys connecting and supporting our students and alumni in achieving their future career goals. Thanks, Kelsey, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And next, I have the honor of introducing today's speaker, Katie Russo, who some of you attending might recognize. Katie did some previous programming for us this last fall. Katie currently serves as a career coach at General Assembly, an education technology company that focuses on transforming careers through pioneering experiential education in today's most in-demand skills in the areas of software engineering, data science, user experience design, and more in the business and technology realms. Prior to General Assembly, she spent over 3 years in alumni affairs at UCLA, serving students and alumni through professional development opportunities and career programming. Before UCLA, she worked at Colorado State University as the primary career advisor for students in the College of Liberal Arts. As a first-generation college graduate, Katie is passionate about social impact work focused on first-generation student success, diversity, equity and inclusion in the workplace, leadership development, and the network gap or opportunity divide. When she's not working, Katie's watching NBA and college basketball, which I always just love sharing that about you, finding new music on Spotify, and trying new restaurants with her friends and family. She's a California native, and Katie received her MA in higher education leadership from the University of San Diego. And she received her bachelor's in Hutchins Liberal Studies from Sonoma State. So she's a proud Sonoma State alumna.
Yes.
So Katie, glad to have you back, and thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tiffany and Kelsey. I'm happy to be back. And for those who have come to some of my webinars from last year, I'm glad that you're back joining and you've come back for more. And those who haven't attended one of our webinars before, welcome. Super excited to get into this topic of personal branding and thinking about networking and how you are showing yourself to potential employers or, even in different industries with you more today. So let's get started. All right. So yeah, Tiffany gave the blurb about me, but my professional background's been in higher education, career development, and career coaching. I will tell you right now that I can credit so much of the jobs that I've been able to get and the jobs I've been able to succeed in goes back to my education at Sonoma State and my liberal arts critical thinking skill set that I gained there. I truly would not be where I am today if I did not have the education and the foundation I gained through the Hutchins and Liberal Studies program at Sonoma State. All right, so personal branding. So let's get into kind of just an introduction of what this is. So what is a personal brand, right? It really is how you choose to describe and portray yourself in a new discipline or in an industry that you're looking to go into, or potentially for those attending that might be alumni and thinking about, pivoting or career change, thinking about entering in a new industry. It is your consistent public persona that you share with the world. It is, in a way, the answer to the question, tell me about yourself, which of course is that infamous question you will get pretty much no matter where you interview or who you interview with. And it's really a synthesis of, any past experience, your current experience, what you're doing now, and then your future direction, or what do you think is next for you? Your personal brand is a short summary that communicates who you are professionally, what skills, value, and perspective you would add to both a potential employer and your industry. And when you think of your personal brand, you really want it to answer 4 questions. So 1 is, what do you do? Number 2 is, what problem do you solve or problems do you solve? 3 is, how are you different or what makes you unique? And 4, as like somewhat maybe brash as it may sound, is why should someone care? But right, it's why is that important? Why is it important for someone to know about you and what you bring to the table? And the importance, of course, I'm sure many of you won't be shocked by any of this information, as you have seen just the ways that social media has significantly changed our world. But your personal brand is important because it exists whether you curate it specifically or not. So I always recommend to students and even alumni as well, like if you've never Googled yourself, especially if you are, entering the job search or thinking about a career pivot or things like that, and preparing to maybe network with new people, Google yourself and see what comes up. Is it things that, is it a blog? Is it your LinkedIn? Is it a portfolio website that you had? Anything like that? Is it, maybe a site that you've done volunteer work with? So make sure that the search results that come up when you Google yourself are showing you in a positive light, and that those search results are things that you would want to be coming up when a potential employer or maybe a recruiter looks you up. So once again, that being said, right, it reassures recruiters and hiring managers as they kind of get to see a quick snapshot of who you are, what you're about, allows people to get to know you a little bit and find maybe opportunities to connect. And then it can also, for recruiters and hiring managers or potential maybe colleagues down the line, it can demonstrate, how you are in addition to the culture ad or a culture fit to an organization. And these are the 3 kind of, I call them the almighty knows of your personal brand. And as you are taking some time for reflection and thinking about how you are showcasing your brand, or even maybe writing your brand statement, or, working on your LinkedIn profile, the about section, 3 things that you really want to focus on. So 1 is know your why. So why are you doing the type of work you're doing, or why are you, for those getting ready to graduate, why do you want to go into that field that you want to go into? What about that excites you? Why do you care about doing this work and contributing to it? Know your value. So think about, what work experience do you have? What skills do you have? What have you done so far in your career or throughout college that has helped prepare you to be successful in the professional world? What are some of those initial skills, and what experience do you have to offer that, next employer? And then know your audience, right? So thinking about how you're talking about yourself to, once again, like I said, potential, maybe future colleagues, a potential employer, thinking about, if you're focusing on a specific industry, making sure that your brand is representative of keywords and things that make up that industry, so that you're kind of keeping a pulse on what's going on there, but also showing that, you are a valuable member of that industry community. So one thing you might be asking too is, what does a personal brand statement look like? Some of you have probably seen, people have, you could even call the about section on your LinkedIn. Like for some people, that's where they've developed their personal brand statement. But you might be wondering, what does that look like? I know some of us have probably even seen it on, I know I've seen it for friends that have started their own businesses or have their own blog or consulting services and things like that. When you go on their website, that's where their brand statement will live, and kind of talk about who they are, the services they offer, and what value can they bring to maybe a project that you need support on or service on. So like I was mentioning, for the personal brand statements, you want to synthesize your brand into a few sentences for your audience. So thinking about who you are, what you do, and the value that you offer. So once again, the brand statements should really answer the following questions that I highlighted earlier. So what do you do? What problem do you solve? What are your passions and motivators? And then what value can you offer? And the one thing I will say too, especially for students who are getting ready to graduate or just recently graduated, when in that first question of what do you do? So let's say you want to be, you want to go into marketing, you want to be a marketing coordinator or a marketing manager. So right now, obviously, you're probably feeling like, I can't say I'm, a marketer or anything like that. I don't have enough experience, but I encourage you to own that identity and kind of step into that role that you're looking to, like those jobs you're looking for. So, in your brand statement, you want to say like, I am a marketer with experience in X, Y, and Z, or with, previous work focused on this, or I've done this project, but own that identity. And, you don't need to say things like, I'm an aspiring marketer. You are like, own it, and be confident in the work that you are, heading into, and showing people that like you're already bringing value when you walk into that workplace. So this is, of course, I know, and like, feel free maybe for here, since we are in, of course, webinar format, if I was in person with you all, I'd be able to ask and get your thoughts out loud, but maybe you can throw it, and can throw it in the chat. But, for example, this is what I want you to think about is like memorable personal brands, right? We can all think of people who have really strong personal brands. So, right, one that I instantly think of is Oprah, right? Like, what comes to mind when you think of Oprah? What does she do? What is she about? So like, you can even, throw some of your thoughts in the chat, but think about folks out there. And even if it's just starting out, thinking about maybe some of those celebrities or thought leaders in like your field and things like that. Like, what comes to mind when you think of those people, like an Oprah, or maybe like an Elon Musk, right? We all have, thoughts about some of those influential people in our society, and what's memorable about their brand. Like, when you think of that person, there should be instant words or phrases that come to mind. So I just thought I would highlight just an example of kind of someone who, for me, has a really strong, memorable brand, which is the fabulous Oprah. Okay, oops. And then one thing I wanted to, sorry, it skipped along there. So the other thing to think about when it comes to your personal brand is the fact that your brand will, live a lot of places. And so these are some areas it can show up. And so I say like related, but not always the same. It won't always look the same in every one of these places, but your brand can show up in, like I said, that first question in an interview, to tell me about yourself. And of course, in that situation, it's not like you're going to, press play like a robot and read off a script, your brand statement, but you want to incorporate pieces of, as you've thought about your brand statement, what pieces of that can you incorporate when someone says, tell me about yourself, and how do you kind of give your pitch for like who you are and what you're about. The next place that will live, of course, is kind of your LinkedIn About section, or the summary section at the top of your profile. It can also be a part of your LinkedIn headline. It can be in your resume summary section, or in the like profile section at the top of your resume. It may be in like a portfolio about me section, or even like a personal website or a blog where there's like the about me or about page. It can live there. And then of course it would, can also be in other places of other social media outlets. So just some things to think about of like where that brand will live and can show up as it evolves. So obviously the other thing to keep in mind is, brand statements and kind of, getting started, they really set the tone for your entire communication strategy, especially if you are maybe going through like a hiring process and things like that. Language, verbiage will vary, and that's a good thing. So, that being said too, like I always encourage students and even, recent alumni, as you are maybe working on your LinkedIn, or even today, if you're thinking about your brand, go look up people on LinkedIn who are, working in the field that you're either already in or going into, and take a look at, how do they talk about themselves on their LinkedIn profile? I know for me, I did not have my about section filled out on my LinkedIn profile until I was finishing grad school because I had no idea what to put there. And that was always the part that felt really intimidating and overwhelming for me to like, how do I talk about myself to strangers on the internet who can find my profile but not know anything about me or who I am and have never met me? So, and of course, for me, that still feels weird. I'm sure it does for some of you too. But, think about, for me, what really helped was exploring other professionals' pages who worked in, at that time for me, higher education in that industry that I was just starting out in, and seeing like, how did they talk about themselves? What is important that they conveyed here? Oh, and then I would kind of collect ideas as I started to think about how I could make my section my own. So these are just, in thinking about, your brand, I'm just going to highlight 3 profiles here just to kind of give you a snapshot of like the impact of a strong brand. So, right. So here we have Noah, he's a software engineer at Gimbal. We have his portfolio website or his GitHub there. And we have nice little cover photo, but like very basic information and not much here for me to go off of. And then we have Kevin. So with Kevin, I have, one line in his summary section. I have that he's a software engineer at Salesforce, so his current job. I do have his photo. I can see, the school he went to. But once again, very brief snapshot, doesn't give me a lot of information about Kevin to see like if there's any points of connection or commonalities or things for me to reach out to him about. And then I have Russell, right? So Russell, also like the other 2, is a software engineer, also attended, USC. But as you can see from this quick snapshot, there is much more information in the about section of Russell's profile. I have links to his GitHub, his portfolio. I even have, I believe, some snapshots of sample projects or things that he's worked on and created. So for me, I mean, even thinking about it, and I'll go back so you can see the other 2. If you were looking for, a software engineer to connect to, and you wanted to do an informational interview or something like that, or wanted to talk to them about their role, and if you were searching through profiles and you came across these 3, my guess is, and you can throw it in the chat if you'd like, my guess is that most of you would probably lean towards reaching out to Russell. Why is that? And that's where, I would welcome your thoughts in the chat of why maybe you would reach out to Russell over the other 2. For me, I would, reach out to Russell because I get more of who he is and what his brand is about, what he's done. I can see some samples of his work. So there's more here for me to work with, and getting that quick snapshot to determine that, Russell might have, more information that I could benefit talking to him about. And I can see some samples of his work. So I can say, hey, we might have a great opportunity for you. And I've already seen that like this site you created looks really great. So things like that. But I'm just showing you the impact of, and LinkedIn, of course, is one example of where your brand lives, but one example of having that strong profile that's, filled out and gives people just a strong understanding of who you are, in a preview online. So what your personal brand should tell me are, a few things as we've talked about. So, why do you want to do the type of work that you're either in or that you're currently applying for jobs in? It also tells me if you're a serious job seeker. So for example, based on even those 3 LinkedIn profiles, to me, if I see that Russell has spent a little more time developing his LinkedIn and things like that, it makes me feel like probably a little more serious about his career potentially or networking, and that's really important to him. It shows me what you're focused on. So that's also really helpful, especially too for like finding points of connection or opportunities for conversation. So in seeing things on someone's LinkedIn profile, they can be talking about the type of work they do, and there might be something there that you're like, oh, I was just talking to my boss about this project, and this person has expertise in this area, and now you know that you can reach out to them because they've highlighted kind of what they focus on or what they work or what their work is. It also tells me a little bit more about how you approach work or what makes you tick, what makes you unique. Once again, where your expertise lies. So being able to find people who have, subject matter expertise or knowledge in certain areas that you might be able to bring them in for different projects. And then it can also tell me, how do you add to current organizational culture or align with an organizational culture for jobs that you're applying for and companies that you want to work for. So now talking a little bit about writing your brand statement, and I'm going to share some just helpful tips. By no means am I saying that you have homework to write your brand statement, but it is something that I encourage you to think about if you've never taken a crack at that before. I'll give you some tips to kind of think about how you can go about writing that for the first time. Oops, sorry. So when you're thinking about your brand statement, you kind of want to think about it in the formula of I am a blank with Y looking to do Z. So X there would be, what do you do? So I am a blank. So what job titles are you exploring, right? Like I was saying earlier, like I'm a marketer, I am a passionate, nonprofit professional, like whatever it is that you're looking to do. I am a scientist, I'm a researcher. So what do you do? That's your X. And then Y is your value. So talk about past work experience, internships, projects. Think about highlighting the most relevant experience that you've had and the skills that you've gained from that experience. Highlight those strengths as the value you offer to, your next employer. And then Z is kind of the, what are you looking for next, right? So like, what's next for you? Is it, you're looking for a full-time role in these types of companies, or you're looking for this type of work as in social media marketing and management or something like that, or you're looking to work in nonprofit and social impact type work because you're really passionate about blank cause. So you want to frame it as kind of a benefit to that potential employer, or for some of you even could be to a potential client as well, if you have your own services that you offer clients and those that might find your LinkedIn and want to connect with you for work. So that's how you can think about kind of setting up your brand statement. And there's an example there as well, kind of in the Z section of what that part looks like. So here is, So here is just one example of kind of as you're getting started. This is a software developer's kind of starting statement. So as you can see, the starting is I'm a software developer with a background in marketing or with a marketing background. And the better version is thinking more a little bit about, like we've talked about, what value, what do you do? What are your passions and motivators? So the better version is a beautiful blend of developer and marketer. I naturally get excited and passionate about all things in leadership, tech, and collaborative work. I specialize in full stack JavaScript technologies to build complete web applications with API systems. So if I saw that better version on a LinkedIn profile versus the good version in the about section, I'd be much more interested in talking to the person who has that more fleshed out brand statement that gives me more specific information about who they are, what they bring to the table. So here is just a basic statement that you can kind of use as a starting formula. So you can kind of fill in the blanks where you want and flesh it out more, but I am a blank, so kind of discipline or like industry focus or type of role with a background in blank. I use my experience in blank in combination with, and that's where you can share, like you can either list more skills or experience to make blank better. And that part you can of course change, but that's just one kind of starter formula for it. And then my goal is to blank. So in helping you kind of see what this looks like, as I started at General Assembly, I worked on my own starter version of a brand statement for myself as a career coach there. So my statement looks like I'm a career coach with a background in higher education and career development. I use my experience with professional development strategy in combination with online course facilitation tailored to the tech world to make GA's outcome curriculum effective and increase access and equity to education and career opportunities. My goal is to build students' career confidence and empower them to find meaningful work. So that is just, once again, that was my rough draft version of trying that out in this formula, but feel free to play around with it and make it your own in trying to create a brand statement for yourself. Sorry, sometimes I think it's on some of these slides are on has some type of transition timer. Okay. And then a reminder too is your brand is going to change probably a lot. So I can tell you right now that up until probably 3 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't think anything about a personal brand. Like I knew, it had kind of been that buzzword we've all heard about, but I didn't really think about how I was creating my brand or how I was going about developing my expertise in different areas. I definitely didn't take the time to kind of stop and think, oh, when people think about Katie Russo, like what comes to mind? Like, what do they think of in terms of like my professional skill set or my professional value? So it takes some time. And I would say, especially like as you're getting started in your career, like continue to gain experience and your brand will start to kind of unfold as you try new things and take on new opportunities. So now for me, like as I've thought about it more, I can tell you that, if anyone knows me and people that, in the workplace, the things that should come to mind for them when they think of Katie are, things like enthusiasm and like a positive attitude. Another thing for me that is definitely, I would say, tied in with my brand that people will see as they get to know me and work with me is my passion for diversity, equity, inclusion in education and the workplace. So that is something that I'm, I make sure is really strongly tied to how I go about my work and how I show up. So that's really important to me. So things like that, like as you start to take time to reflect on yourself and the work you do, you will start to find pieces of your brand that, that you can kind of weave together. Okay, so then moving into just kind of, I'm going to just give some brief snippets for LinkedIn as you're thinking about, how your brand and where it can show up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about LinkedIn and places to incorporate your brand, like the About section. I'll give some guidance there. But first, going to give just a quick snapshot of LinkedIn and overview for those that maybe, don't spend as much time on it or haven't, maybe you've started your profile, like you created a profile, but you don't go on and, you don't regularly log in. And so hopefully this can encourage you to go in and maybe update your profile or add some more information there after today. But LinkedIn is, of course, the world's largest professional network. There's over 772 million users as of, I think, Q1 of this year in 200 countries and territories worldwide. It's a platform for professional networking. It's a top job board and an employer and industry research site. The other thing to keep in mind is it's not just another social media site. So you want to be mindful about first impressions and language choice on there. So thinking about how you are engaging on the platform, the posts that you're liking and commenting on. I have some stories from my past role at UCLA of an alum reaching out to me after seeing a student's comments on like a UCLA post on LinkedIn and having a kind of bad impression from the comments there. So, that does happen. And even though you may not think about it when you're just on there commenting on things, you do want to be mindful that as someone scrolling the newsfeed, like your comment could be highlighted or they could see that you liked this post. So you just want to think about how you're engaging and interacting on the site in a respectful and professional way. There's over 14 million jobs posted on there and 1.3 million company pages. And this is where you want to think about, kind of as you're thinking about the purpose of LinkedIn, right? There's a few different features and aspects in terms of like the value of LinkedIn for yourself. And so one would be that it is your dynamic digital resume to attract and keep recruiters. 96% of recruiters use LinkedIn during the hiring process. It's also a place for you to build credibility. So being able to either write posts, share information, share articles, engage with others' content, endorse people for skills, collect recommendations from people that you've worked with so that they can talk about your strengths and the value that you bring to an employer. It's also a fantastic place to find mentors and professionals to learn from. So as you continue to build your network, being able to identify new people to connect with and expand your network. So thinking about informational interviews and talking to people who are in roles that you'd like to be in someday. And of course, the ultimate goal too is, when you're thinking about using it to apply to jobs, increasing your chances of getting to the top of the resume pile. So finding a recruiter or connection at a company that you're interested in working at. So I'll show you, especially for those that are with us today who are in the middle of job searching, I'll show you how to do that, where you can search for like a recruiter or HR contact at a company. I'll show you that in the search. Oh, sorry about that. Okay. And then something else to keep in mind as you are building your profile. So the first three things that recruiters notice on your profile are your name, your picture, and your headline under your name. So when you first start your LinkedIn, it will default to whatever your current position or job is. I encourage you all to think about tailoring that to something more personal and unique about your passions or kind of your goals or career direction. So, one that I have included there that I just gave as an example is Sonoma State sociology graduate exploring careers in social impact and technology. So if I'm a recruiter scrolling through a bunch of LinkedIn profiles of Sonoma State grads, I could probably see a ton of like student at Sonoma State University as I'm scrolling through search results. But this headline, Sonoma State sociology graduate, that one is going to stand out amongst all the like student at blank universities. So think about tailoring it so that your profile stands out and is a bit more unique and draws in the attention of the recruiter to click in your profile and learn more. So here are just a few examples of some students and recent graduates, like how they have structured their headlines and how you can think about crafting your own headline and what's important for you to share in that. I forget, but it's not a large character limit. So you have to be thoughtful about like choosing your words wisely there because you don't have a ton of room. But here's some examples of what that looks like. And the other thing I want to highlight is the LinkedIn About section. So the one I told you that for me, I did not work on until I was like finishing up graduate school and trying to find a job. And I was told like, I need to have something there. You want to think about, for those that maybe don't feel as confident in what you have in your About section, I recommend writing that section in the formula of kind of present, past, future. So that's how I would structure writing that your About section. So your first mini paragraph would be focusing on the present. So what are you doing now? What motivates you? What are you passionate about? What are your interests? And then the second mini paragraph would be focusing on the past. So talk about past work experience, internships, projects, any student leadership or involvement. So what experience and skills do you have? What are your strengths? And your third mini paragraph is focusing on the future. So what's next for you? Is it a full-time entry-level role because you just graduated, you're getting ready to graduate? Is it an internship? Is it volunteer work? Is it graduate school? So what types of opportunities are you looking for? And what types of organizations are you interested in working for? So, there might be some of you out there that know that maybe you don't want to work for a large corporation and you want to be at a small startup, or you want to be at, small business, something like that. So talk about what types of organizations or what values of a certain organization are really important to you, right? So for me, I know that like, if I am thinking about my career and job search, I'm not going to sign up to work for an employer that doesn't actually practice what they preach when it comes to, aspects of like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to see that not only, I don't want to just see words on a website. I want to hear about it from people that work there. So being able to talk about like, what are those values or important factors in an organization that you want to work for, and highlight those in your About section. And then it's, it's an opportunity to highlight your your relevant experience, important experience, include industry keywords, and then also showcase your personality. So as you may explore other people's profiles, you'll see some people do keep it kind of strictly professional and focus very much kind of more seriously on their work. There's a lot of other people who blend the personal and professional. And so I have, taken clues from others as I've looked at profiles. And over time, in the last few years, I incorporated a little bit about myself personally in my profile because I started to realize the value of getting to know people at the human level, and that we all are more than just like a job title or a student or anything like that first. So for me, actually, what I enjoy now is being able to see the personal aspect on people's profiles, because that usually gives some easier things to connect to people over, of just like, if there's a mutual love of a TV show, or, you're both Lakers fans or things like that. So it's an opportunity to showcase your personality and a little bit of who you are. And then for your experience section, the other thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure you have your specific job title and your organization tagged if possible. I know sometimes not every company has a LinkedIn page, but if they do, make sure that you don't have any like typos, so that you have the organization, you click in and have it tagged in your experience section so that they can click into the company page and learn more. And then your LinkedIn profile is not your exact resume of bullet statements. So think about, in that description section, instead of your exact bullet statements from your resume, having a few sentences about what you did in that role. So, like I mentioned here, thinking about writing a few sentences like, what did you accomplish? What projects did you work on? What skills did you gain or improve on? You want to think about, in that description box, how are you a better professional as a result of this position, and making sure that that answer is demonstrated in your description there. And then the experience section is great because you can add rich media to your sections to showcase your organization and work. So websites, photos, presentations, portfolios, like a blog post, a YouTube video, you can add all that as media into your different experience sections as well. And then the other thing you can do is to create, that will once again help with your personal brand, because you can have this at the top of your application materials, is creating your personalized LinkedIn URL. So I'll show you how to do that. Let me just go into LinkedIn here and show you that really quick for those that do not have their personalized URL yet. So if you're on LinkedIn, you go up here to view profile. And then up at the top, as you can see, there's this edit public profile and URL. You're going to click that. On the right-hand side, top right, edit your custom URL. And that's where you can personalize the URL for your profile. So I recommend typing in, like first name, last name, or first initial, last name, whatever. If you're John Smith, you probably have to add John Smith and your favorite number, because it is probably already taken. So if you have, common names, something to keep in mind, but you literally type in what you want there, click save, and then it will automatically say, oh, we've updated your settings, and then your URL is updated. So in your, like on your resume and cover letter in your header section with your phone number and email, you can have your LinkedIn URL. So for me, I just have linkedin.com/in/Katie Russo, instead of LinkedIn's default when you first make your profile has, a combination of random numbers and letters that fill your URL. So it's nice to clean it up and have the personalized one. Okay. Let me just see here before I show a few other things. Okay, so now talking about, the alumni tool. So let me show you that as well. Those who have joined me before, this will not be new to you because I've showed this in a previous webinar. It is one of my favorite things about LinkedIn, the alumni tool. But the way to get here is to type in Sonoma State University in the search box, and you want to make sure that you click on the school page. So as you can see, you want to type it in so it says school, not like company or group. So click the school page. I'm sure as either a current student or a graduate of this institution, you're already following this fabulous school page on LinkedIn. But if you're not, click that, click follow. And then what you're going to click here is you're going to click alumni at the top. And so this is, like I was talking about, to help you find more people to add to your network and to reach out to for informational interviews and things like that. So there's over 50,000 SSU alumni on LinkedIn, which is pretty amazing. And as you can see, if you scroll down here, you can see the locations of where these alumni work, or excuse me, where they live, then where they work. And then if you click next up here, I want to highlight this especially. This next page brings you to another great filter which is kind of job function or industry that they're in. So in the what they do, this is kind of their job function and industry. And then what they studied. So for example, if you wanted to find, if you were a sociology major and you wanted to find other SSU sociology grads, I could click sociology. And then maybe I want to go over here to next. And I know that, let's say I want to work in like nonprofit and education, maybe I'd click community and social services. And now I have 260 alumni to look from or look into, and I can see the top employers of where they work. Keep in mind also, I will also highlight for you all that you will always see that Sonoma State University is the top bar and employer for where they work. And that is because if you all are like, if anyone is a current student at Sonoma State and is working maybe in anything with the industry tagged, or maybe they've already added that industry of like community and social services, if you're a current student, you're going to come up in the where they work. So just know that that will always show up as the top one. It doesn't mean that like all students, end up working for SSU, but it's just because if you're a student and it's tagged in your profile, it will pull you into that because it's where you're currently working. So keep that in mind. And then, like I said, you could even click into some of these employers, but then you can also, depending on where you're located or where you live, you can filter it. So if you wanted to click the Bay Area, then you can filter it and see the 268 go down even further to find sociology grads working in community social services in the Bay Area. But I encourage you to scroll down here and take a look at who some of these folks are as you put in those filters and see like any shared connections. So for example, with Andrew, I have 10 shared connections. So he would probably be a great person for me to be able to say to one of my 10 connections, hey, so-and-so, would you be able to connect me to Andrew? I'd love to talk to him about his role at, as associate manager of blah, blah, blah. So scroll through, see shared connections, and also look at the diversity of people's job titles with their degree. That's the other part that's really amazing in here, is seeing that once again, your major does not equal your career. I can't stress that enough. And so look at how different people's job titles are in the industries that they're working in with the same degree, because it's really amazing, especially when you're scrolling through here and seeing just all kinds of things that people are doing and where they're working. So that's the alumni tool. I highly recommend. That's a great place to start for finding folks to contact for informational interviews and things like that. Okay. And then, so the other things I just want to highlight are some quick networking highlights as you're thinking about, maybe expanding your network or reaching out to folks, especially for those that are currently job searching or those that maybe are career changing. So these are some stats from jobvite.com. They did a survey about kind of the power of like networking and referrals when it comes to the job search. So employee referrals actually have the highest applicant to hire conversion rate. While only 7% of applicants come from referrals, this small number accounts for nearly half of hires at around 40%. Employees that are hired through referral are hired 55% faster than those who come through a career site. Online job boards are still the most popular for posting job openings at 69%, but most workers find out about job openings also through friends is 45%, social media such as LinkedIn is 42%, and then professional connections is 31%. So those are just some things to keep in mind with the power of leveraging your network and leaning on connections and building connections, especially if you have target companies that you're trying to work for or roles that you want to be in, finding people in those roles that can help kind of move you along through that process or give you some great advice and insight that can help you try to land that role. And then I won't get too much into these so that we can leave plenty of time for questions, but I once again just want to stress how valuable informational interviews are when it comes to the job search and building your network, and also giving you a chance for you all. It's a great place to be able to kind of practice sharing a little bit about who you are and your brand. So informational interviews, for those that aren't familiar, are really just kind of career chats. They are like day in the life interviews of professionals that you admire. So think about reaching out to some, Sonoma State alumni that might be working in an industry that you're going into to learn from them of like, tell me, I'd love to learn about your career path. How did you get to the role you're currently in? What does the typical day look like for you? Like all of those questions are informational interview type questions to have in that conversation. And then this, I'll share, the slide deck will be shared with Tiffany for you all, and it'll be shared out. So there is, for those that maybe are more in the beginner stage of informational interviewing, there is a link here to an informational interview question bank. If you're like, well, I don't know what questions I would ask in that setting and things like that, I have a link to question bank so you can pull questions from here when you are reaching out to have that conversation. And like I said, it is an opportunity to learn about a company before applying, get that insider information. It also is a method of dramatically increasing your chances of getting a referral. So I can tell you right now that the last 2 jobs I got, including this General Assembly job that I got beginning of this year and my UCLA job, both of them I got from doing informational interviews. So I had reached out to someone before applying for the UCLA job. There wasn't even actually a posting at that time, but I knew I wanted to work there. So I talked to someone, and then job opportunity came open a month later and she reached out to me. And then my General Assembly job that I got at the beginning of this year, I reached out to an old colleague who started working there after we worked together and said, oh, I saw you posted something about LinkedIn that you all are hiring. I reached out to her, and next thing you know, she connected me to the hiring manager to have an initial conversation. And that's when my interview process began. So I can't stress enough, like the informational interviews unlock opportunities that you might not even realize are there at the time. And they will help you get jobs. The other thing to keep in mind is when connecting with someone on LinkedIn, you always want to send a custom personalized message. So even just a brief, 2 to 3 sentences there of like, hi, so-and-so, took a look at your profile and I saw that you're working here. I would love to learn more about how you got there, or I'd love to learn more about your role, or I see that you're also a Sonoma State alum. I'd love to talk to you about how you got into, how you landed this job or whatever. So you always want to include a brief note there. You want to beware, that being said, you want to beware of the quick connections here. So when you're in the My Network tab on LinkedIn, it will pop up like people you may know, and it'll give you suggestions. If you just click these connect buttons, it sends off the request. You're not able to include a message at all. So think about only doing this with like maybe another classmate or like a close friend or someone that you have just a more casual relationship with, versus like if it is someone that is more of a stranger and someone you don't know and have mutual connections with. I recommend you always want to send a brief message so that someone knows why you're interested in connecting or how they can help you. That's what people want to know in that quick message. So beware of the connect button there and the quick connections. And then these are, I won't get into them, but you'll have access to all these. These are just some sample for those that, once again, may be more inexperienced in reaching out for informational interviews and networking. These are just some sample kind of connect request message templates that you can use and make your own to reach out to folks for an informational interview or just to have a conversation. So some sample templates, someone that you never met, someone maybe from your past, if you worked together in the past, or maybe you were in the same student organization. And then this is also maybe like someone that you actually know, but don't like really know. So those are some sample message templates you can use to reach out to people. This is the LinkedIn for Students website. There's some great resources in there to check out. So I highly encourage that. And then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I will stop sharing there so that we have time for questions.
Great. Thanks, Katie. That was wonderful. A lot of great just nuggets of, I think important takeaways. So I want to open it up, to the group participants. If you all have questions, please feel free to throw them in the Q&A function here, and then we'll make sure to get to those. There was a question that came in from a registrant asking about, transferable skills. So this person asked how one might make their skills look transferable for other jobs or careers that may not be typically viewed as, correlated. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing, and I'm going to pull it up as I talk so I can put it in the chat for you all. But one thing I can highlight is that, actually, I'll get it after and I'll put it in the chat. But there is, so the NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, they put out a survey every year, the Job Outlook survey, and they survey employers across all kinds of industries, everything from engineering, nonprofit, business. And they ask employers in this survey, what are you looking for what qualities or attributes do you look for in your new hires and in new candidates that you're bringing in to your workplace? And these skills are the things that for many people are called soft skills. For me, they're called transferable skills because they actually are more valuable, I think, than technical and hard skills. But they're things like problem solving, written and verbal communication skills, teamwork, like collaboration, like analytical thinking. So like so many of these things that you probably don't realize you're gaining, not only just from your like education at Sonoma State, but even maybe from like student involvement experiences, if you have a leadership role, things like that. So if you're thinking about your transferable skills, especially for that person who asked that and thinking, you know, oh, these past skills might not be as relevant, I promise you there are probably skills you can pull out from past experience that are relevant. And that's where you can also think about, you know, if you're wanting to grow in the area for the new role, think about going on like LinkedIn Learning or like Udemy, or even exploring just some other online learning sites where you can, you know, take some different like trainings or courses and build up skills in that other area that they might be looking for you to have a little bit more. But, you know, like I talked about, reflect on those experiences and think about like, what are those key things I took away from this? Was it communication? Was it problem solving? Was it teamwork? Like, you know, and knowing that those skills you have will only add value to your future employer.
Great, thanks. I posted the link
Awesome.
for the NACE
Thank
career
you.
readiness competencies in the chat if folks are interested in reading. So yeah, we talk a lot about that too at the Career Center. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Another question, I'm not seeing any Q&A yet. So another question that, you know, I hear a lot from students and alumni when it comes to LinkedIn and personal brand are, you know, beyond my like about me section.
Yeah.
What do you recommend I post on LinkedIn? Should I repost articles? Should I post when I get a new job? Like what is, you know, what do you recommend when it comes to posting on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's a great question. One that I for sure get often too. And I would say, so, you know, when it comes to engaging on LinkedIn and posting, I would say that, you know, you do want to something if you, especially if you're feeling like in getting started, you're like, oh, I don't really know what I would write on there. I don't, you know, I'm not ready to write an article. That's totally fine. I totally get it. So in that sense, I think in getting started with just wanting to be active on the platform and have a voice on there, you know, as you all are reading articles or coming across, you know, cool events or things like that, share that on LinkedIn, you know, especially if it is connected to things that maybe your network might want to see. If it's an industry event or a cool networking panel, or, oh, Adobe's hosting this, you know, creative, you know, event or something like that. So share that event on LinkedIn and say, oh, just stumbled upon this great event, looking forward to it next week. Feel free to share with your network. So share events, share articles. I will say if you share an article, something I encourage that can help you as you start thinking about being able to write a little bit more on your own on LinkedIn is, you know, as you're sharing the article, pull out one kind of key takeaway. Like, what did you take from this article? Why should I click into your post and the article and read it, right? Like we all have so much going on and our attention spans are short, but you know, highlight, you know, here's this, I was read this great article, loved the point here about X, Y, and Z, or really loved the highlight on this, and give them a quick snippet of like, what's something that, you know, pulled you in or you walked away from this, you know, article with, and encourage people to click into your post, right? So yeah, I would say like do things like that. And as time goes on, think about, you know, writing a post. And if you're, you know, taking a really impactful class, or if you did a great internship, like write a wrap up internship post. So I just completed this internship. This was what this experience was like. And then definitely, like Kelsey asked, if you get a new job or you get a new position, absolutely share it on LinkedIn, like celebrate that. And let your network, you know, congratulate you and cheer you on. So for sure, highlight those accomplishments. Of getting a new role, or even like maybe you started volunteering somewhere, make sure you add that into your profile and show people what you're doing and how you're spending your time and energy, and what's important to you. Like that's what they want to see, and comment and like, you know, posts that are, you know, relevant to you as well.
Great. Thanks, Katie.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions from participants? Again, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. I'll give it a few seconds here and see if anything comes in. And if not, then maybe we'll close. I know you talked a lot about personal brand, right? Developing the
Mhm.
personal brand statement, being able to utilize it in a variety of situations. Something that, also comes up often with students and alum that I meet with. How do you recommend that folks on the call today think about, how to make their personal brand or elevator pitch maybe feel genuine and
Mhm.
authentic as opposed to something that feels maybe like a robotic sales pitch?
Yeah.
What are some techniques or strategies you have around that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I encountered that question often with my students at General Assembly and like my one-on-one meetings with them of feeling like it can feel salesy at times, right? Like it can feel like, do you feel like you're having to sell yourself? Like that doesn't feel fun, right? So I totally validate that. I think something that I recommend is, you know, really taking time. And this is where it's like taking a moment to, I know we all have a lot going on, but taking a moment to pause where you can and reflecting on what you've done so far. So even like looking at your resume or jotting down like on a Google Doc or in, a notebook, like what are some things you've accomplished, both like the big things and like the small wins, like throughout your time at Sonoma State. And then even maybe for like recent graduates, like, if you had started an entry level role, like even landing that job, like that's a huge accomplishment. So jot down like, what are some key accomplishments or wins that you've had so far, like either throughout college or in your life? And then think about, as time has gone on, like what experiences have you had that have really like shaped who you are and how you operate, like what makes you tick, right? Think about those things and think about like how that connects to maybe your own like passions and values. So, for for me, part of the reason that I'm in this work, right, is because when I was at Sonoma State, I remember going to the Career Center and I had like a peer advisor look over my resume, but I knew nothing about jobs, careers, anything. I laugh now that I teach this and try to encourage and show people the way because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And so part of the reason now that this work is meaningful is because I'm able to help others find their path because I was lost, right? So like think about the work that you want to do. Like why do you want to do that? What excites you about that? And that's where like answer those questions in your brand statement of like what's exciting to you about this work, or why do you love marketing? Why do you want to work in, poverty and homelessness relief? Like what about it? Like what part of your life or what experiences have you had that have shaped like why you care about contributing to this work? So talk about like, why do you want to contribute to this work? Why do you want to make an impact in this? And share a little bit of you and your story. And I think that helps make it feel more authentic and genuine.
Great. That's such good advice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Um, Perfect. Well, we are at 1 o'clock. So I just want to say thank you, Katie. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
coming and sharing
absolutely.
today. Thanks to everybody for joining. I'll put one plug out there that the Career Center supports students, alumni as well, for alumni who are 1 year out of graduation. So if our recent alum want to reach out to the Career Center, you're welcome to do that. I'll throw the email in the chat. But thank you again, Katie.
Of course.
Thanks, Tiffany and Chelsea, for hosting. And thanks to everybody for who joined us. And I hope everybody has a great afternoon.
Yes. Thanks so much. Take care.